The airlock hissed open, and Albert found the creature in a recycled cargo container, wrapped in thermal blankets that had seen better days. The hatchling's scales were dull, almost gray instead of the brilliant emerald that draconian young were supposed to display. One wing hung at an odd angle, twisted from birth, and the small dragon's breathing came in labored gasps that a note was pinned to the blanket in draconian script. Albert's translation implant buzzed to life. Defective. Cannot survive. Forgive us. The war veteran knelt slowly, his cybernetic leg whirring softly in the station's artificial gravity. 15 years since the draconian conflict had ended, and still, they were leaving their weak to die. Old habits, he thought bitterly. During the war, he'd seen it firsthand, how the draconians culled their own, believing only the strong deserved to live. Not on my watch, Albert muttered, carefully lifting the hatchling. The creature was surprisingly light, malnourished, and trembling. Golden eyes fluttered open, filled with pain and confusion. Katniss was conducting her rounds in the station's medical bay when Albert appeared in the doorway, cradling something against his chest. Her dark eyes widened as she recognized the creature. Albert, is that a draconian hatchling? Found him abandoned at the airlock. His voice was gruff, but Katniss had known him long enough to hear the underlying emotion. He's hurt, wings deformed, and I think he's got respiratory issues. She should have reported it immediately. Protocol demanded that any draconian presence on the station be logged with Central Command. The peace was still fragile, treaties still new. But when she looked at the small, broken creature gasping for air, she saw only a child in need. Put him on the examination table, she said, already pulling up diagnostic equipment. Albert laid the hatchling down gently. The creature whimpered, a sound that shouldn't have come from a species humanity had fought for decades. Katniss ran her scanners, frowning at the readings. Congenital deformities. The wing will never function properly. His lung capacity is about 60% of normal. She looked up at Albert. His own kind left him because he'd be a liability. So we fix him, Albert said simply. Albert, we can't just… Yes, we can. His steel-gray eyes met hers. We're better than they are, Katniss. That's what the war was supposed to prove, wasn't it? That humanity doesn't abandon those who need help. She remembered why she'd fallen in love with this stubborn, scarred man. You're going to get us both court-martialed. Probably. He smiled slightly. You in? Katniss sighed and pulled up the hatchling's cellular structure on her display. I'll need to synthesize supplements for his respiratory system. And we'll need to fabricate a brace for that wing. It can't heal, but we can stabilize it. They named him Ember, for the small spark of warmth he brought to the cold metal station. Over the following weeks, Albert converted his quarters into a makeshift sanctuary. He requisitioned heat lamps, claiming they were for personal use. He traded his ration credits for specialized proteins that Katniss had identified as essential for draconian development. Every morning before his shift, Albert would sit with Ember, teaching him simple words in standard. The hatchling learned quickly, despite his physical limitations. His golden eyes would light up with each new concept, and gradually, the dull gray of his scales began to show hints of green. Katniss fabricated the wing brace in the medical bay's 3D printer, disguising it as prosthetic research. When she fitted it to Ember's twisted wing, the little dragon chirped with relief. The brace wouldn't let him fly. That would never be possible, but it supported the wing's weight and eased the chronic pain he'd been living with. You're good with him, Katniss observed one evening, watching Albert carefully feed Ember a mixture of proteins and supplements. He reminds me of the soldiers I served with, Albert replied quietly. The ones who came back broken. We didn't leave them behind either. 3 months passed before the inevitable happened. A draconian diplomatic vessel docked at the station, and among its delegation was a female dragon who stopped dead when she saw Ember through the observation window of Albert's quarters. Her name was Syrinx, and she'd come to petition the station commander for trade agreements. Instead, she found herself face-to-face with the hatchling she'd left to die. This is impossible, Syrinx hissed, her translator rendering the words in perfect standard. That creature was defective. It could not have survived. Albert stepped between her and Ember, his expression hard. He survived because someone gave him a chance. You don't understand our ways, human. The weak deserve compassion, Katniss interrupted, moving to stand beside Albert. That's what separates civilization from barbarism. Cyrix's scales rippled with what might have been shame. She looked at Ember, who now stood straight despite his brace, his scales bright green and healthy. The hatchling met her gaze without flinching. "What have you done to him?" Cyrix asked quietly. "We gave him medicine, proper nutrition, and a chance to live," Albert said. "What his own kind denied him." The dragon diplomat was silent for a long moment. Then she bowed her head in the draconian gesture of respect. "I was wrong. My people, we have been wrong about many things." She looked at Ember again. "May I speak with him?" Albert nodded, stepping aside. Cyrix approached slowly, speaking in the draconian tongue. Ember responded haltingly, his words simple but clear. The conversation lasted several minutes before Cyrix turned back to the humans. "He wishes to stay with you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "He calls you father and mother." Albert felt something tighten in his chest. He can stay as long as he wants. Word of Ember spread through the station, then to other outposts, and eventually reached the draconian homeworld. The dragon who should have died became a symbol of something new, a bridge between two species who had spent decades trying to destroy each other. Albert never thought of himself as a hero. He was just a war veteran who couldn't walk past a dying child, regardless of species. But as he watched Ember grow stronger each day, learning and laughing and living despite his disabilities, he understood something fundamental about humanity. They were the species that didn't give up. Not on themselves, not on each other, and not on a small dragon hatchling that the universe had declared unworthy of life. That, Albert thought, was what truly made humanity special. And in the cold vastness of space, on a metal station orbiting a distant star, a disabled dragon hatchling thrived, because two humans had quietly decided that every life deserved a chance.